Welcome back to Real Repairs for Real Customers. I feel a little bit responsible for us not having a seminar this year, so I thought, why not have a mini seminar here on our channel? And of course, what better way to start a seminar than the way we always do, with a cup of coffee? In fact, my wife says there's no reason to go to Starbucks and spend $5 for a vanilla latte when I make them better at home. And I only charge her $3.50. So, right after this, let's go. Of course, when it comes to thinking about attending the seminar, I can only speak for myself, and I see this pandemic well along on its third wave, it appears. So traveling is not going to be easy or not necessarily advisable for me. The testing sites are no longer accepting reservations where I am, and of course you need a test before you can fly. This testing site, you can see how booked up it is already. I can't imagine getting stuck out of town for a few extra days trying to find a test and get the results before you can make your return trip. Now, even though less than 1% of field techs have ever been to a seminar, those that do find that it's really an invaluable place to see products demonstrated, but also to talk to fellow technicians and get insights into the business that you will not get from any other source. So for this video, let's consult together as fellow technicians and just discuss a few things of current interest. Let's talk about the new Ultratorch design. Did you know there's a new design? You're only going to hear about it from a fellow technician because the distributors have not let us know. A common question one tech might ask another: what is your suggested air pressure for your airline? And of course, when we get together, we're going to talk about the weather. What about the weather? Needs discussing. And we're going to finalize our discussion with a very simple Escalade steering trim repair. Many technicians have been using the Ultratorch either as a miniature heat gun or for the ironing method. The older torch had some problems, and a lot of field technicians got disenchanted with it. Sometimes the self-igniter just wouldn't work. Of course, sometimes the catalytic converter part of it would go bad and you would need a new part. And then sometimes the gas that was being used, the butane, would plug up the filter. So these were all things that led to frustration out in the field. You can imagine getting started on a repair and being frustrated because your tool did not work. Now you can tell the old and the new apart. I have the housing off of it, so you can see the differences in the ignition between both of them. I contacted Master Appliance and asked them what it was about the new ignition that made it unique and that made it more reliable. I didn't get any specific information back. I just got the brochure they send out to the public. But you don't redesign something without a reason for the redesign and without purpose. Unfortunately, we don't have that from them. But I can say for a certainty that we've got a much more reliable ignition system in the new model. In the old model, the piezo starter put out a spark you could see. The new design is obviously different. The Ut100si is available by itself or with a K suffix, meaning the kit which comes with the metal case, or the TC, which is the tool case version, one you would have if you were doing soldering, for example. With Ultratorches that have been returned to Master Appliance for repair, the biggest single problem is clogged filters. And that clogged filter comes from using an inferior butane. They strongly recommend their specially filtered butane just for that purpose. Now in our industry, it's just replete with the cheapest cheapskates that ever skated cheaply. And they want to spend $1 less on butane from somewhere, rather than get the recommended butane. But why lead yourself into frustration by clogging up your filter? So if you're going to buy their tool, buy their fuel. One difficulty I've noticed with the older tool, which is, I probably have had that 20 years, I'm guessing, is that when it's very humid, sometimes it doesn't want to start. And I'm imagining maybe that's due to the humidity causing a short to ground before it gets to jump the gap to make the spark. Sort of like a bad spark plug wire. So I've dried the unit out and it seems to start then. So that's a little something helpful to you if you still have the older unit. But what I mean to say for our seminar this year is that the new unit seems to be totally reliable. I've never had a problem. You push the button one time and hold your hand over the exhaust port and you will feel the air warming up right away. It's one time start every time. So I'm pretty excited about that. Now I'm not selling these tools and I'm not saying to go buy one. I'm saying that for you technicians that are using them, I think you're going to be way, way happy with the new model. Now here's a question we might hear at the seminar. What air pressure do you use? And we recently got this question on the channel as well, so let's just take a minute. Of course, for every compressor, you're going to have a couple of different gauges. One will be the tank pressure, and one will be your line pressure. And the line pressure here is about 90 pounds. And let's go around and take a look at this other compressor from the other side. Okay, so my other camera wasn't focusing well enough to read these gauges. So you can see I'm approaching, what is it, 130, 140, something like that on the tank. Now for the line, I'm generally running at about 90 pounds. And what is the correct adjustment then for the line? Well, that's going to depend on, of course, what you're using. Now, if you're using an air stapler, you might want to be set at 90. So set it at the PSI for the equipment that needs it the most. If this setting is too high, it might affect the ability of your paint gun to work effectively. It might affect this regulator. For example, I've been in a shop where the line pressure was so high that it disabled the regulator on my gun. I couldn't spray at all. The regulator on the gun would not work. It overloaded it, and so there was no adjustment at all on the gun. There was no air. I just plugged it up. So that's something to think about. I think 90 pounds is good for the things that I do for the stapler. Now I can always turn that up if I happen to be using the larger compressor and I need more air pressure, like to drive a orbital sander, a DA, dual action sander. I can always adjust it for that. But I think 90 for what we need as far as stapling and as far as painting. Now, of course, we're not going to spray at the 90 pounds, right? And so we're going to want a regulator on the gun to regulate actually what's coming out of the gun efficiently. So let me hook up an air hose and let's make that adjustment. All right, so at the gun you will already have this adjustment for your pressure, and that's all you really need at the gun. And if you're going to use that, you can listen and see how it sprays, and that's going to be your only adjustment. You don't need a gauge. My preference, though, on some of my guns, I will have the gauge because it comes with another adjustment here. So I like to leave this one open. Sometimes you'll see me tape it open so that my little finger doesn't accidentally adjust it. And then this regulator has a bigger knob, so I can get a finer adjustment using a big knob than a small knob. That's the reason I use this particular adaptation. Now, the real criteria is in the sound. If you're first getting in the ballpark for your pressure. Here the pressure is down to almost 0, and you can see at 20 pounds we have a nice sound. It's kind of a smooth flowing sound, but as we get up here it starts to get more dramatic. And see, at 50 pounds we start hearing a hiss. Right, we got more of a hissing sound, and that's too much. You'll have a lot of your spray will be drying in the air before it gets to the substrate. So you're going to listen and get a nice smooth flowing sound. That's a good way to start off. Of course, the end result is really the final gauge of your pressure. So I don't really look at the gauge too much. If I look at the gauge, it's probably just to see if I'm going in the right direction with my control, if I'm going up or down. Right? I can see that with the gauge. Of course, I can hear it too. If the compressor's running, I can't hear it, but I can see it, right? Know I'm going in the right direction. So, as I say, the right pressure really doesn't depend on a number here. It depends on the end result. And you will see me using a cardboard before every job just to test to make sure that we are spraying, right, that we're not clogged, but also to make sure we're getting the proper atomization. So if I'm going to start with texture, okay, I know which direction to go here. And what I'll do is I'll start really low and see what kind of a atomization I get. And I can hear it. I can get a really big droplet, okay, if I'm looking for texture. Whoop, I'm out of frame there. So here we are. So at very low pressure, I can barely hear it. Okay, we're getting a big droplet. And now you can see why I like the big knob here on this regulator, so I can fine-tune that to get just the exact size droplet. But then I'm going to jack that up, and we'll hear it hiss a little louder. And let me see if I'm in frame here. There we go. And so what I'll do is I'll keep upping the pressure until, like if I have a nice atomization, like for my final color coat, that's what that's going to be. And that's a nice smooth sound, isn't it? And that happens to be on the gauge right at 20 pounds. So I don't use the gauge necessarily for the number, and you won't need one necessarily either. But nonetheless, at the end of this line, we have plenty of air to run a stapler if we need to. We have plenty of air to run for painting because we're never going to probably paint much above 20 pounds. This is a HVLP gun, by the way. So we don't need much more than 20 pounds. But the correct pressure is in the end result. The correct pressure is from the large droplet size to the medium droplet size to the just barely when you get to the fine atomization maximum air pressure. And the other thing about an air hose, I use a rubber air hose, and I've had this one for about 20 years. And can you see how that's getting cracked? So I've kind of been on the lookout for another hose. I did an impulse buy at Lowe's the other day and got this hose, 50 feet, fits on one reel. And so now I've got a backup hose. I got a really nice looking one for when I want to look like I know what I'm doing. Okay, now it's time to talk about the weather. And it's a matter of survival in August. Let's consider one moment in time. This is a Saturday. I will sometimes work on a Saturday morning because it's better than working in the afternoon on a weekday. Temperature-wise, that is. Now, it's not too hot today. It's 86 degrees according to my phone here before noon. So I'm going to use my phone now to check the local weather station. It says it's 89 degrees with a feel-like temperature of 100 degrees. So why does it feel like 100? Well, if we look down, we see the relative humidity is 64%. So how do we figure that? We can reference a heat index chart. If we look at 90 degrees temperature Fahrenheit on our chart and intersect that with 60% relative humidity, we get a feel-like temperature of 100 degrees. And so that is how the weather station is giving us the information. So this heat and humidity combination falls in the range of what they call extreme caution on our chart. Okay, so that's the current conditions at the weather station. Let's take a look in our van. Okay, so this is inside the work van at the same moment. This is in the shade, but both doors are open in the back of the van. I'm here mixing a color. It's 103 degrees. So that's the actual temperature. Of course, at the higher temperature, it can hold more humidity, the air can, and so therefore the relative humidity may be a few points less. But let's consult the chart and see what the feel-like temperature is going to be. So at 103 degrees, it looks like our feel-like temperature is going to be somewhere between 130 and 137 degrees. This puts us in the dark red, extreme danger category. Likewise, the vehicle that we are working on the pavement, in the sun, probably is 120 degrees inside, so we open the doors. It's still going to be similar to the back of our van here in temperature. And then we get ready to do our repair, and what do? Well, we turn the heat gun on 1,000 degrees. So the point is, it's only 89 degrees outside, and we are, as interior repairmen, in extreme danger. Extreme danger. It's not even noon yet. Add to this the fact that the sweat is dropping from your forehead and from your arms. The sweat is coming out from your gloves. And if a drop of sweat lands in the finish, you can spray 20 coats on top of that and you will not eliminate that drop. You have to strip it back down. One drop of sweat ruins your finish. And if you bump your arm against the seat, you will see that spot forever and ever, unless you clean it all the way back down and start again. So this is why I tell my customers when it gets this hot, they can go pound sand, and I'm not working in the afternoon. Believe you me, the public has absolutely no idea what we're facing out here working inside these automobiles in August. Now, we're not trying to play doctor on this channel, but be your own health advocate. There is information out there as far as what to watch out for heat exhaustion or heat stroke. There are supplements that can be taken to help you to deal with it. And certainly you should consult your physician on any of these matters. And we've got a very easy Escalade steering trim attachment for today. Also, I want to mention something upcoming for next year that might interest you. Don't be the guy that sticks super glue underneath the wood trim. Just pull all the wood trim completely off of the steering wheel, as I've done here. We can clean the steering wheel up. You can use acetone here. You can use acetone on the inside of the wood grain. If you don't get the mess out, you're not going to get any kind of adhesive, I don't care which one it is, to do the job. This is all goo on the inside. I'm using contact cement here with a brush and just putting the glue where it belongs, where that channel used to be. You can see that. If you color outside the lines here, that is not a problem. In fact, never really worry about getting your contact cement outside the lines on an application like this. The cleanup afterwards is so easy. The same is true, a lot of upholsterers find, with the spray glue, even the spray contact cement. You don't have to worry about spraying it outside the lines at all. You spray it and assemble the pieces, and then you clean up the overspray, and then there's absolutely no problem. So we've got both surfaces clean. We've got contact cement on both surfaces. We don't have to be in a hurry to put it together. Let them air dry a while. It could be 5-10 minutes, depending on the heat and humidity. Just don't let it bleed over into the afternoon because, no, just kidding. So there you go. Fit it on there, pound it home. Now what I do here, I take some xylene. We're going to clean up any adhesive that's outside the lines. Not any difficulty. And with something like this, after the cleanup with the xylene, everything looks nice and clean and shiny and buffed anyway. So there you go. Now in this particular steering wheel, there is also color, of course, off. And we're going to come back and put some color on. We're not going to mask anything. I can just use a brush and get right up against the wood grain with the brush. It just cuts in really nicely. It saves trying to get tape to stick to anything. Just be very, very careful and do not color outside the lines. You knew that was coming. And while this is ongoing, what's in store for next year's seminar? Well, as you know, if you've been to the seminars, I always have some new ideas in the cooker. And so I've been probably the last 10 years, when I get a moment here and there, I try to improve on some techniques. So I've got a new repair process that I've been using. Many years ago, I was getting some really great results, but they were not consistent. I'm going to put a little paint right there on the wood trim because it's a little bit of a light spot. And on the back side now, we can do around. As I was saying, sometimes on the new repair process, I was getting 100% results and sometimes not. And it's difficult for me to recommend something outright if it doesn't pretty much work 100% all the time for anyone that wants to use the process. So we've been refining that. And I've also designed a tool for our work, and I'm on the 5th prototype of that now. So we're looking forward to next year maybe having a whole new way of repairing and a brand new tool. So stay tuned for that. And so I've had the opportunity to share some personal experiences with you at this year's mini seminar. If you have experiences, likewise, they can be the same, or if you have different experiences with the Ultratorch that you'd like to mention, if you'd like to mention something about how you cope with the weather, or maybe the settings that you're using for your spray equipment, feel free to put your comments in, because that way we'll have an exchange of ideas at the seminar. Any ideas are good, even if they're ideas that we are not using at the moment. We may come upon that circumstance in our work when your idea will be beneficial. And before I close out, I have a road repair bonus footage. I have a metal culvert that broke and caved in, leaving a hole. I'm responsible for my own road repairs. So I pried everything back into shape, and I found this. It had to be the giver of wisdom that let me find this. It's the perfect length, the perfect width, and the perfect radius to do the perfect repair. I had a bag of concrete left over from the previous job, so there it is. I even put some of the asphalt into the concrete to bring the whole thing together in a nice design. Just don't go telling anybody. This is a culvert operation. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.